Good afternoon, everyone. This is Charlie Pankey, Sierra Now Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Wherever you're at, we hope the Sierra is within your sights. Snow has already started falling in the Sierra. So whether you're a fisherman, skier, cross-country skier, snowshoer, it is a time to be in the mountains. All the ski resorts are opening. Mount Rose opened today. And so lots of excitement in the Sierra, different events for the winter. And we're getting ready to strap snowshoes on and go explore in the wintertime, which is one of our favorite things to do. So we hope you have those opportunities as well. We're super excited about today's show. We have a great guest on you today. We're going to be doing a little bit of a book review and a trip review that I had never heard of before. That sounds absolutely daunting. And my guest here, Withanee, it says Milligan Withanee, but I know you as Withanee Andersen. Which one should I be calling you today?
Milligan is my married name.
Very name. Okay, very good.
Yep.
So we're with me today. They wrote a book called Walk of Ages. We're going to be discussing today, which is a trip from Whitney to Death Valley, and we're going to be going through a review. So stick around today for that. We're very excited. But as I've always said, we can't do any of this without some sponsors and some people who support me and all the stuff I'm trying to bring us here today. So please, hold on for a little message from our president. And we're having a little volume thing going on with Whitney today, so hopefully that video didn't go super loud on you. I'll have to do some editing afterwards. But Whitney, thank you for joining us today. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm honored, truly.
Very cool. Hey, listen, I got your book sent to us. I know what, about 2 months ago from the PR agency, and it was really something pretty exciting. I actually know that you and I've met before, but I didn't know that at the time. The story caught my interest because it involved Mount Whitney, obviously, in Death Valley. And I usually love going to Death Valley about this time of year, actually, because November is a great time to camp in Death Valley, right?
Yeah,
And so I started reading just the first little bit of it, and that's when I reached out. I said, "I've got to talk to you about this trip. I mean, what an experience! You guys literally climb Mount Whitney, come back down, and then walk all the way to the lowest part of the United States, all in one trip." And that sounds painful to me.
It was brutal. Yep.
Brutal. Okay. How many years ago did you guys do this? 'Cause I know this is like a recount of your story in the book. So
Yeah, so we did it in 2017,
okay.
and we did it to honor my dad, who was the first person to ever make this documented journey back in
Wow.
1974. Yep.
Oh, that's great. So he had. So I picked a little piece of the book. I should remember that. So he'd done this when he was younger, and then you guys were doing it kind of as a revisit to the trips that you could experience it with him.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So he did it when he was 30. And so, it drastically changed his life. It really
Okay.
did. And he talked about it my whole childhood. And so I guess a seed was planted because it just became very large and important in my brain. So late 20s, I thought, you know what, I'm going to recreate this and do it the exact same age that he was when he did it. So I did it when I was 30 as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it's on your
Yeah.
third. Oh, that's really cool. I didn't catch that part of the book. So, uh, were you have you always been a hiker? Do you hike a lot and backpack a lot? Is it something that you're pretty common for you?
It's a good question. I do love hiking, but I don't do it as much as you would think, especially doing something this extreme. And that was the same for my dad. My dad was not in any way, shape, nor form a hiker or any kind of outdoor enthusiast. He had these big ideas and he would just go for it.
Oh
And he
wow.
came from sea level. He smoked cigarettes. I mean, I don't know how he survived truly. But at the time, I was actually a wildland firefighter for the U.S. Forest Service.
Oh
So
okay.
I was in decent shape. I thought it would be easier than it was, to be honest. But so I did a lot of hiking, but it was for work. I didn't do a ton on my off time.
Fair. So your dad being 30 and being from sea level, climbing Whitney, he must have told you some pretty amazing stories. That had to be pretty difficult. I would imagine.
It was, yeah. Honestly, the and he actually wrote another book about his own journey long before we did this, but
Okay.
it almost killed him. Yeah, he lost. I think after he got done, he lost like 20 pounds in 2 days or something. He was so dehydrated, got so sick. He wasn't prepared for anything of that magnitude. And honestly, I don't think we were either. We just didn't think it would be as hard as it was, really was going from the highest to the lowest point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you got this as a childhood and grew up and kind of, I don't know if you guys did this together and say, hey, let's do this together. If you brought this to your dad, maybe I should ask that question. Did you bring this to your dad as an idea to do it again, or did he kind of, egg you on it
Oh
with
my
her name.
gosh, no. I brought it to him and he was like, "No, you're not. You're not. I'm sorry. What? Why would you do that? That was awful." And I just said I want to do something really big, and I just feel that I just had this big urge to do it. And he told me the night before we started, we had a campsite there in Lone Pine, and he said, "I thought you were just kidding. I thought until about a week ago when we literally had everything packed that you were just gonna back out and say, what was, I'm not going to do
Had
that.
you climbed Whitney before?
Oh no, nope. Mm-mm.
Very good.
Yeah, no idea what I was in for. And unfortunately, like my dad back in '74, it was a lot easier to get passes and stuff. And so
Mm-hmm.
he was able to get a pass to camp up there and break up that first day because, we talk a lot about it was 131 miles, but that doesn't include getting up to the starting point, right? So that's 11 miles up Mount Whitney. It's
Yep.
a really tough hike. It really is. And so we were hoping to break that first day up, but you have to enter a lottery to be able to purchase a pass to camp out on Mount Whitney because it's so popular. And just like every lottery I've ever played, I didn't win. And
Okay.
so that forced our hand to have to hike up and back down 22 miles on the first day of this huge 131-mile long trek. And if we didn't make it due to weather or just physical, whatever it was, I mean, the whole trip was called off because that was the only date that we had.
You had to get that done, right?
Right.
Matter of fact, give me. I'm going to try something here. I actually did a little pre work because in chapter 4 of your book, there is a quote I want to read to have the audience read here. Hopefully, this worked out for me. Give me a second here. Let me pull this live.
Okay.
So in the book, let me see if I can make this live. You write, and I'll hit pause here. But we said our good nights and all retired respective beds. I thought this would be the best part, having a full belly and one big accomplishment. Oops, go back. How do I go back? Oh, see, I got to learn how to do that. Here, I can hit pause over here. Hold on. And it said, hardest sleep I'd ever had, right? Instead, as soon as I lay down my sleeping bag, my entire body starts screaming at me. Every single thing hurt and I'm uncomfortable, need to change positions the right way. I had never felt pain like that before, the walk in which I felt every single day. And I read that in chapter 4. I believe that was, you had just got down the mountain from a long day. You guys had to travel to a campsite. It wasn't like you just got to come down the mountain and rest. You had all these things you had to do so you can continue the trip, right? So I just thought that was really brilliantly written. To be honest with you, people talk about Whitney and the peak and how great of experience is, but none of them really talk about how hard it really is, right?
Yeah, it is so hard. And again, like I thought I was in shape. I mean, I hiked for a living. I thought I was, this was going to be tough, but, doable. And that first night, I just thought, this hurts so bad. And I was just popping Advil like candy, my whole body. And I had a knee injury coming down Whitney, which proved to be a problem for me. And which is so funny because the same thing happened to my dad. We had such parallel journeys. But that really, really caused problems for me the rest of the walk too. So there was just so many things. But yeah, Whitney it's no joke. It's really hard.
Yeah. And you guys didn't carry your backpacks all the way to the top, right? So you hiked it like a day hiker and then came back to camp and then loaded up for your journey across. Did you have a team that went with you the whole time, or was it just it's like there's a couple of different voices in the book. I'm not going to remember all their names, but kind of explain that too.
Absolutely. My dad and I co-wrote this. So he wrote it. I would write from the perspective of the walker in 2017, and then he would write from his perspective as our support party, and he would reflect back on his own original journey from time to time, 40 years prior. But him and my mom rented a motorhome, bless their hearts, and they followed us around. So we were really blessed in that way. We didn't have to carry our, sleeping bags and all of our, there wouldn't have been, I don't know how you could carry enough water to make it across Death Valley. I mean, it's so hot. It doesn't matter when you go. It's tough terrain. And so they resupplied us every day. But there were times when they couldn't get to us. But I was just really lucky to have. And then it was just so special to have him with me every night. And, we would talk and debrief the day. And then he would kind of gear us up for the next day. He'd read us a chapter in his book so that we could kind of try to imagine what we were going to face, although it was much harder, than we could have ever imagined. But it was really special to have him there with me. That it just made it so much fun,
Very cool. So once you get down Whitney and you start your trek to Death Valley, tell us a little bit about there. Were there days that were surprisingly awesome, days that were beyond challenging that you thought they would be? What kind of stories you got in the book? I've read some of them, but I haven't got through the whole book. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to share those. So
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, the most awesome part of it was when it was over.
yeah.
But no, there was, this. I gotta say that there's no trail for this thing. I mean, obviously Mount Whitney has a trail, but after that point, I mean, every day was a different type of terrain because you're going from such extreme high, to extreme low. So we were walking on the sides of highways. We were just straight desert bushwhacking a lot of the times, dry lake beds. We went down a really hellacious canyon that I will never forget, which had basically dry waterfalls, so just sheer vertical rock drop offs that we had to try to navigate our way down. Of course, we had no cell phone service the whole time, so if someone would have gotten hurt in there, like I don't know how we would have gotten them out. So
Sure, because this is not like a trail that everybody can just go hop on, right? You're just cross country. Yeah, okay.
Yes, just cross country. Yeah, and so every day just provided like different challenges, but there were a lot of moments that were just really special. One of the days, my parents woke us up at 4 a.m. because we had a really long day that day. We were contending with that canyon and just a really long, I think it was over 20 miles that day. And they woke us up at 4 a.m. playing my dad played a guitar, and they sang this song that my dad had listened to by Creedence Clearwater back when he did the journey that kind of gave him an uplift. And so that was amazing. My husband walked into a road sign one day that just had us laughing hysterically. Like there were just these little moments. And, when you're doing something of that magnitude, those little tiny things really get you through because they kind of pick you up for a minute when you think you're going to quit. I thought I was going to quit every single day. I can just leave this and walk away and nobody cares, but it just became, I don't know, it just became so important that I just take another step and try to get to the next checkpoint and try to see my dad and that's just kind of how I just one bite at a time. That's just kind of how I dealt with it.
Earlier, I guess it was last year, I got to interview a gentleman that started the American Perimeter Trail organization who's doing a trail around America. And he tells about the story of walking through Death Valley in the water and wanting to quit, and those little milestones they have to hit that bring you joy. Like he literally had a fox steal his water bag in Death Valley and had to chase a fox through the desert to get his water back, right? So it's like the little things like you think that would be devastating, I'm going to quit, but he says it actually brought him joy because he was doing something so wild and crazy, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
Pretty neat.
And I guess I should mention we ended this thing on Devil's Golf Course. We had to cross Devil's Golf Course. So if you've been to Death Valley,
that's horrible.
So sharp and jagged, and these pinnacles just covered in salt, and it's just kind of a chess piece move to the next rock, and so that was the very end. So our bodies no longer had the ability to be stable like that we needed to be able to cross that.
Oh,
my
yeah.
Fell, cut himself up, and then it literally rubs salt in your wound when you fall.
Exactly.
It was so hard. And my dad actually ended up having to do that. He ran out of water and had to cross that in the dark, in the pitch dark. And I don't know how he survived it. I really don't.
Not Devil's Golf Course. If you've never been to Devil's Golf Course, if you're listening to this, it really is. It's a wasteland, if nothing else. It's where all the floodwater settles every spring, and then there's so much salt in it. It just forms like these crystallized, lumps that are, they're really sharp and jagged. I've tried to walk through there myself and be like, I'm not doing that, even when I'm not tired. It's fine from the road, so it's pretty. That's pretty amazing. So you think back and decide to write this book with your dad, or and you're doing this story. You're 30 years old. You've now kind of acted like a first-time explorer would. Back in the frontier days, those guys just cross this stuff with their horses sometimes, not actually sure where they go. What would you say to people who like to get out and explore and do trips and plan stuff that's kind of, maybe not this trip, but does any trip, you have any words of wisdom for people that kind of have this hankering to go explore?
I think if you have an urge to do something like that, get out there and do it. Even if you think it's a wacky idea, for me, it was so life-changing. One, because it was so hard, and because I didn't really know what to expect, and it was much reality slapped me across the face several times. But I just think, there's something about being outdoors that's transformative anyway, and then you tackle that couple that with doing something that you didn't think you could do maybe, and it's magical. It's life-changing. And so I think if people have that urge, they should get out there and do your research. Obviously, I luckily had my dad who'd done all the research.
Right.
And it is amazing that he did that without having I mean, he had a paper map and a string. I mean, he didn't.
Yep.
This was the '70s. He didn't have GPS and all the technology and a
Mm-hmm.
motorhome fault. I mean, he didn't have any of that, and he just had this big idea, and he went for it. And that I always, took away from that if you have this wacky idea, why not do it? You might inspire a generation behind you and change their lives too, which is exactly what my dad did for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I'm prepping for this last night. I have a friend of mine who does a lot of backpacking in the Sierra, and he was telling me last night, we were talking about Lyell Canyon in Yosemite and this route between Devil's Postpile, which he's done a couple times. And he said, actually, the best part off is the day he went off trail and went over Kuna Crest and built his own trail through the mountains. He says, I'll never forget that trip. He says, same destination, same starting point, but a completely wild, kind of unmarked, just with his paper map. And he talks about that being his favorite trip ever because he was doing something that was following his own heart instead of following a trail someone else had built for him. It's pretty cool. So
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, how cool. So tell me about your dad a little bit. I mean, if you don't mind, he is passed, correct? I want to be honest with the readers.
Yes,
So
yeah.
what was it like to grow up with your dad? I mean, what inspired? Did he do more inspiring trips after this? What kind of things do you want to share about your dad?
Yeah, he was first and foremost hilarious, and so a lot of the book is written. We're very self-depreciating humor kind of thing. So he was really a funny guy, and he just had a heart for the outdoors. But it wasn't, like I said, it's not mountaineering or any of that. It was just he. I mean, he was really into prospecting, and he would just get out in the country because he just loved to be outside. He always said at the end of a paved road is the beginning of a great day. And so
Amen.
he lived his life big and in that way. And so yeah, he passed away in 2022, and we submitted this manuscript in 2020. So
Mm-hmm.
we had hoped that it would be published, but we didn't know at that point. And so he passed away unexpectedly, and 5 days later I heard from the publisher that yep, they're gonna publish this book. And it was really hard for me to move this forward without him. It was in very deep grief at the time, but now it's the most precious thing I own. I mean, I have his words forever,
Right.
and they live on, and it just means the absolute world to me. And I can't get over the amount of memories that we made together on this, both the walk and writing the book.
Right.
It's just
I
something
I,
that
uh, I captured this for the audience. I want to share this screen here one more time if I can. Let me see if I can get to pull back up here so everybody can see it. Uh, and I'll pull this forward and hit pause. So you write this at the end. At the time we completed the walk, I knew I had done something truly special, something that somehow furthered an already unbreakable bond with my father. Yet it was the turning pages of time that this particular week of our lives has become even more significant than I've ever imagined. My sweet, hilarious, loving, incredible sandwalking dad. I love sandwalking dad, by the way. Went home to be with the Lord May 12th, 2022. He was so excited about the prospect of our story mixed with a little love, adventure, and IPA, which, by the way, good choice, becoming a book. And we dreamed about it for a long time. We spent countless hours poring over these pages together, laughing, wincing, rewriting, smiling, remembering their life. They live and breathe with exactly who he was. I got this down because of the purpose of his life and the unyielding faith. And I found this picture. I hope you don't mind, but it's actually the Whitney Trail. Somebody else walking. I found it on Canva. But I was going, how awesome it is as a child. I think of my own dad, and he's getting old too, going that you were able to do this with your dad and then write your own words going, I've captured their spirit. So it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because going, what a cool thing that you're able to finish this book and have it out there for your kids someday to read and for generations to be inspired by, which is kind of the whole purpose, right? So
Thank you. Yeah, I did a book club the other day, and I always thought this book was about just this epic, funny adventure, and through my eyes and through his eyes. And I had a gal come up to me, and I'll never forget it. She said that book wasn't about an adventure. That book was about love, and it was about
yeah.
love between you and your dad. And I'm really grateful that a lot of times, you do something to honor your parents or your family after they're already gone. I'm so grateful that we did this when we did, and that he was there to just be in the trenches with us and making me laugh every night. We'd have IPA every night just to unwind and try to numb some of the pain. But and so I get to have that forever, and it just means so much to me. It's my most
Yeah.
treasured memory for sure. So
I just finished a 40-mile walk with my son in Yosemite, my oldest son. It was an absolutely amazing experience. And the one thing I keep going back to is these little, you talked about earlier, these little moments I've just had with him, sitting at Washburn Lake, completely exhausted, tired. He thinks it's the most beautiful place in the world, and all I can do is kind of take a swim, right? It's like, can you think back to your trip? I know you're with your husband, but you see your dad every night. Can you think back of sitting around a campfire or in the motorhome, whatever, any moment that kind of comes on going and kind of share a story with us about like a favorite moment there?
Yeah, gosh, I gotta say, every night is so different because we were in such different landscape and such. But the second night we were it's called Dolomite Loop, but we just kind of pulled off on the side. There was a little side road, and we parked there, and we kind of had the motorhome, and then we had the chairs all set out, and gorgeous sunset. And we had my dad and my mom brought these like plastic wash tubs, essentially filled them up with hot water, put salt water in them, so we could like Epsom salt, so we could
Oh yeah, okay.
blisters galore. I mean, horrible. And so we were sitting there, and I'll just never forget looking over at him with the sunset in the background, and he had just had this goofy grin, and he's going, "What are you doing, kid? You're doing this, and I'm so sorry."
You're only 2 days in, right?
Yeah, you're only 2 days in. But another great memory for me, and I didn't know this was happening at the time, but you can read it in the book. But my husband proposed to me on the top of Mount Whitney.
Well, I missed that part. I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's okay. He carried that ring up there. I mean, I thought it was pretty brave, because if I'd said no, he still had like 100 miles to go with me. But lack of oxygen. I had no idea what was happening when he did that. So, but he had this conversation with my dad the night prior. And my dad wrote about that in his chapter, just being asked by my husband, and for my hand in marriage. He didn't know people still did that, and he was just so overwhelmed with like emotion that once he dropped us off that morning to hike Whitney, it was 3 a.m. We had to start that hike. He just started bawling, and he recounts that all in the book. But that was pretty magical as well. It's like coming down off Mount Whitney and just like knowing that those two had been in cahoots together, and he was very mischievous that way anyway. So it was just so special. There was just incredible. So many memories with him that I could just, I snuck a blow dryer with me. Don't know why I did that. We stopped at a campground for a shower, which was so exciting. And I was just trying to get my hair dry. I'm using that blow dryer at a campground. I don't know why I did that, but I knocked out the power to that whole place. And just watching my dad laugh until tears rolling down his face, going, "Why did you bring up? Like, we're on a journey here.
We're 130-mile journey. You're gonna be dirty."
Just little things like that. He was just a hilarious guy. So he was often laughing and making us laugh.
Where'd the nickname Sandwalker come from?
Yeah, so he actually coined that term for his party back in the 70s. And, I think he took it from, and I might mess this up, but there was a wagon train crossing Death Valley a long time ago, 1800s sometime, and they were called the San Joaquin Company because that's where they were headed, was the San Joaquin Valley. However, they broke down and they almost all died. And it was like a really bad thing. And so they changed their name to the Sand Walking Company. And so my dad took that and adapted it to be the Sandwalkers. That was what they called themselves. And so we called ourselves the Sandwalkers Second Edition. And so we had t-shirts made. I mean, we had koozies, hats, the whole thing.
Oh, perfect.
It was really fun.
How many days did it take you to finish the walk?
It took a week.
1 week. So you did the 130 miles going up 14,000 feet down to, I can't remember how negative the bottom is. 200 feet below in a week. Any effects on the body but for doing that besides just blisters and pain for climbing? I mean, I've never thought about that really. I mean, you probably transition fairly slow, but
you do transition slow. So I think I had a lot of headaches. That was something I kind of faced. Dehydration. Trying to stay hydrated out there again it's just a really tough thing. And then also, like, you had to kind of worry about the weather, right? Like, depending on what time of year you're going, you might face snow on Whitney, and you might face like extreme heat in Death Valley, and you just never know. We got fairly lucky, but it was really hot down in Death Valley. We got lucky on Whitney; it didn't snow. But I don't know if I think it's because we went so slow that I didn't feel too many effects of the altitude part coming down. Yep. However, going up Whitney, I mean, that is a trip, really, truly. What it does, the lack of oxygen kind of affects everybody differently. It hit my brother very hard. He was the oldest out of all of us. And we had those little oxygen masks, but they weren't, or the little, you get them off.
Yeah, the little kit canisters, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that it made much difference or we didn't use them enough to make a difference, but he just, I mean, he was feeling it bad. He was hardly talking. My husband had blue lips. I was just like, I felt like the worst headache you've ever had, and
Mhm.
so some of that was tough, but that was mainly on Whitney. That went away as soon as we got off the top.
Yeah, I don't think it's talked about enough how we're not overly made to be at that altitude, especially the exertion it takes to get up there. And
Yeah,
people talk about they did it, they got the T-shirt, but then a
yeah,
lot of people don't talk about really how hard it really is on the body, and especially if you're not in tip-top shape. And
yeah,
like
yeah,
people
and
ask me all the time, I hike like, have you done Whitney? Have you done? I go, no, I'm a 260-pound out of shape male who I can hike well, but I'm not made to go up some of these peaks, man. That would be bad, bad sign probably for me. So,
well, and they,
I
they encourage you to acclimate,
yeah,
get up
exactly.
and stay there at Whitney Portals, somewhere around 8,000 feet. We
Yeah,
tried, we tried to get a spot there over a year in advance. Couldn't get a spot. I mean, it
yeah,
is so popular. So we ended
difficult,
up staying
difficult.
down in Lone Pine, which was at 6,000 feet.
Yep,
Luckily, we were living in Tahoe at the time, so we weren't coming from sea level like my dad
yeah.
was, but I mean, it still affected us greatly. So I truly don't know how he did it coming from sea level, but yeah, it's a
That's crazy.
kicker
Well,
though.
hey, we're coming up towards the end of our show here. Let's talk about how people can get a copy of this book. I know you guys it's out. It's Christmas season. It might be a great stocking stuffer for the family, right? But
Yeah.
the book is called Walk of Ages. Where can people find a copy?
Yeah, Amazon is probably the easiest place. It's also in Barnes and Noble in Reno and that kind of place, but Amazon's probably the easiest. And
Awesome. I'll tell you
thank
what,
you
after the
so
show,
much.
send me that link to Amazon and I'll put it
Sure.
in the video link on YouTube and on my post, and people can, go take a look at it that way if they want to as well. So now,
Thank you
Whitney,
so much.
one of the things I do with all my guests as we finish up here today is I have three questions I ask everybody.
Uh-oh.
They're very simple questions, but they're about you personally and your outdoor experience. Okay. And I know you said maybe you're not the hiker all over the place, but everybody has an answer to these. It's pretty easy. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask those of you now.
Sure.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. All right, so let's assume that you and your husband, let's say your husband have the next week off. Your bags are packed, and you're going to the Sierra Nevada someplace.
Oh
Where are
gosh.
you heading and why?
Whew. Wow. I mean, Sierra Nevada is so beautiful everywhere. Um, I think I'd go back to Lone Pine. I think I'd visit Mount Whitney. I don't know if I'd hike it again. But Alabama Hill, that whole area
Alabama
is
Hills, cool, huh?
stunning. Oh my gosh, you feel like you're in a western, and you quite literally are because they filmed so many there.
Yep,
But I think that's where I'd go. Yeah, but
that's
there's a
neat.
lot of
Lone
options.
Pine's a good answer. I've only been down there a couple times, and it is a good adventure every time I go down there. So, very cool. All right, so maybe you'll think about this trip here that you took, but when I go hiking, I'm always got hiker hunker when I'm done, right? And food is a good part of my life. So there's always like the meal you have to have after a good hike. So maybe like think about like you got done with Death Valley. What's like the go-to meal for you after a big adventure?
Well, after the Death Valley hike, I had so much pizza, I made myself darn near sick.
Pizza's a good choice.
Yeah.
Now, are you like a pepperoni person or are you a
Yep.
combination?
I'm
What's
pretty
what?
boring. I like pepperoni and jalapenos because I'm a little
Hey,
picky.
you and me. That's my favorite. Pepperoni jalapeno. My
Oh,
wife and
nice.
I do that all the time. That's the way to do it. So occasionally I'll sprinkle some pineapple, which my wife completely
Oh yeah.
hates, but the pineapple adds a little sweet and spicy. It's pretty nice
Yep.
on that. But
That's good.
very good. All right. Well, finally, maybe think back this trip or think of any other trip you would do on that. But is there a piece of gear when you do outdoor adventures that you always have with you? Like I'm a big map guy. I'm like your dad. I carry paper maps everywhere. But
Mm.
there's everybody always has a piece of gear. Sometimes it doesn't even make sense, but your blow dryer might be a good example. What piece of gear do you never leave home without?
Embarrassing. Um, I'd say good shoes. I made a mistake on this trip that I wore. They were so soft and comfortable. I didn't want to wear a hiking boot because I wore those. I wore big, heavy boots in fire, and gosh, they're heavy, right? And I
Yeah,
thought
exactly.
131 miles, like that's going to be rough. So I had these real soft shoes, but unfortunately, my feet cramped a lot because they were just so soft. They're kind of like when I was walking on
Yeah, no
rocks, my feet
support,
would
right?
just
Yeah.
stay right. It wasn't the right shoe. So I think it's super important to have the shoe for what you're doing and break them in because I didn't do that either, and I had some pretty bad blisters.
Do you have a favorite pair of outdoor shoes?
Mm, I can't. I think I. What did I wear? I wear. It's funny. I wear running shoes a lot, and I wear. This is gonna sound really sad, but Lululemon makes a good running shoe
Oh,
that
okay.
I swear by. used to wear New Balance, but
Yep.
Luna's got a good running shoe too.
There you go. Very cool. Well, one last question, if I might ask, if this had nothing to do with outdoor, but do you have future plans for more books? This is a good book. Do you want to write is something you enjoy?
I do want to write more. I'm currently, my husband and I, we're having our first child, and so
Congratulations.
that and career keeps me pretty busy. But I'm a nonfiction writer. I've tried to write fiction, and it's so cheesy. So
Right.
I feel like I need to kind of fill up my life's tank a little bit more and have some more adventure. And then I would definitely consider either freelancing or writing another book. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Well, the Sierra's got plenty of adventures ahead of you. I hope you enjoy that. We want to thank you so much for being on today's show. As we wrap up here, your book is really cool. I haven't finished it all, but I've got pieces that I downloaded on my system, and it's a really fun story. The pieces I've caught, so I think readers should enjoy it. If you're out there today and you're looking for a good book for the holiday or just like reading, again, put the book back up there for them so they can see that again. It's Walk of Ages. It's written by Withanee and her dad, Jim Andersen. You can search them up on Amazon, or Amazon's probably the best way, right? So, but take a look at, support them. They're a family here locally, grew up in Tahoe region, and it's really a cool story. Not a trip that we're recommended by anybody, but we are recommended to get out and explore and do adventures. This is really what they're about, is Whitney and her dad doing something really cool together. So, Whitney, thank you. Withanee, I keep saying that too fast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited for whatever comes next for you. And your trip was inspiring, so we're glad to have you here. And if you're out there today and you're listening around, we hope the Sierra is in your future. Again, Mount Rose Ski Resort open today. Ski resorts are all opening in the next 2 weeks. We've had cold nights, so they're making lots of snow, and we're ready for a great winter here in the Sierra, so we hope you are too. Come and join us next week for our next podcast, and we thank you very much. Also, a reminder, our winter snow edition is out November 21st. Catch it online. We'll have all the ski resort and some of our best snowshoeing tips for you as we like to get out and explore the Sierra. Have a great day wherever you're at, and go explore.